So many of the things that I try and do in 40K throughout the various editions and throughout various armies are come up with the idea of tactics for your 40K toolkit. And what I mean by that, and this is certainly not a criticism, the strength is that there are many, many ways to play 40K. It's very easy to look at your army, and you should look at your army and figure out, what are the tactics? How does it work? What does it look to do? How am I going to leverage the strengths against my opponent and the various weaknesses of my army? How can I minimize that? Either through unit synergy, taking other units, or by keeping my opponent so busy, even though they know the weaknesses, they can't exploit them. And that works. But there's also somewhere between your army and the base DNA rules of the game, there are tactics that you can utilize regardless of army, regardless of faction, regardless of the mission, based on just how toughness, movement, shooting, psychic powers, just on how the game works. And I call these toolkits because we imagine this 40K toolkit where you can do 10 or 15 different things, not all at once, but you select one or two advantages at the start of the game to utilize against your opponent and leverage that in addition to your army. So an example, and I've been updating kind of all my little toolkits from the previous edition, 7th, now into 8th, and kind of looking through there, seeing how they work. And this is called a Commando unit. These are my tactical labels. Certainly make them, use them as your own. And this is still a work in progress, so I'm pushing that out there not only to share with you guys what I'm working on, but also to say we got to refine it a little bit more. We got to see. I don't know if it's going to completely transition over. And once I'm done with all of these little toolkit tactics, I intend to, depending on your preferred medium, push them up as podcasts, vlogs on my channel here. That'll be under a separate playlist. Or the link under this podcast to my blog, I'm going to put it up as a PDF and as blog articles. So you could, if you want to look, you can find it that way. If you want to listen, you can find it this way. So a Commando unit in the past, I would utilize this with Tyranids. And again, this is the greatest example of it. You can utilize these with any army. I would take 5 Gene Stealers. And this was in 5th edition. No, this was in 6th and 7th edition 40K. 5 Gene Stealers were really, really cheap. They weren't overly scary, but if they made it into the assault, they could do a little bit of damage. Plus, there was still some sort of psychological, technological hangover where people were actually still afraid of Gene Stealers for some reason. And I always found it interesting because we would play 40K with or against Tyranids, and Gene Stealers are supposed to be like, well, they're an alien ripoff. Yesterday was Alien Day, right? Gene Stealers are supposed to be worse than aliens. They're supposed to be like insane, right? But in 40K, they get gunned down in droves. Then you play something like Space Hulk, okay? And you've got Terminators. You've got the Blood Angels, the Blood Rage and stuff, the Red Thirst. And you send in your 5 or 10 Terminators, veterans among the veterans, and you're in Space Hulk, and one Gene Stealer runs up, and you just die. You're like, wait, I'm Terminator. How do I die? It hits you, you're dead. Like, Gene Stealers and Space Hulk, no joke. They're insane. But so there was like somehow this fear of it at the time. So I would take 5 of these guys, and let's say you've got a group of Space Marines. I would take a group of 5. I would run right up to you, and then I would stop. I would pause. I would not assault, because if I assaulted you, I would move into the assault. I'd kill 3, 4 tactical Marines, and then you would strike back because you're Space Marines, and even though I'm a higher initiative, you still get your attacks back, and you would thump me on there. You would kill me. So was it an even trade? Maybe you could say it was even. Maybe it wasn't the best of trades there, but it would be better for me to run up and pause, and now on your turn, you have to react to me. And that reaction might be you shoot into the Gene Stealers and you kill them. Well, that was good because you weren't shooting at my Carnifexes, which are running up. Or you were not, trying to torrent down Swarmlord or start taking out my Devil Gaunts, taking those guys out. There were other more important units, but because this Commando unit was literally 2 inches away from your tactical Marines, you would shoot. Another way that I would utilize it is to shut down parts of the gaming board for a turn. Now, a turn doesn't seem like much in 40K. The balance here, of course, is points. I can't spend tons and tons and tons of points on commando units because they are 100% sacrificial, and 100% they buy you one turn. Maybe 2 turns, but 1 turn. So that's 1 turn is a lot because it's finite game turns in 40K, but you really got to balance it out on there. So if I would take 3 or 4 commando units, run them up, say, to the left side of the table and intersperse them, say like the pips on a 5, on a D6, you got to navigate through that. I'm not moving. I'm not shooting. You can assault me. You can shoot me. You can do whatever you want. It's going to potentially slow you down on there. Another way would be to take a commando unit. Those are sacrificial ways. They affect the game. Non-sacrificial ways would be to take a commando unit and run it up behind some line of sight blocking terrain and just park it there. Now we've got the threat bubble. That's up in the podcast archives too. I've got playlists for 40K threat bubbles. That's going to kind of go into detail of that. But you're projecting out a radius of threat on there. And if your opponent can't see it, can't draw a line of sight to it, I mean, they can physically see it looking down. They know it's there. We don't have true hidden rules in 40K right now. Not that we should or should not. But they got to navigate around it. It's going to influence them. So commando units influence. And they have some way, they can't start in your deployment zone. I can't take like 5 Space Marines. That's not really a commando unit. Although I could put them in a Razorback. But now we're starting to invest a lot of points. Now we're trying to put stuff in there, and maybe on some of those Marines I want to have some upgrades or something. We're spending a lot of points. I need 4 or 5, 6 commando units dirt cheap on points. With the Gene Stealers, they would infiltrate, they would run up. So they would have the advantage of getting into tactically place and working. Another way, I would run commando units in my Fritz Templars, the Black Templars, the Red Templars. I'd take 5 Assault Marines, naked. Well, naked, no upgrades, not actually non-power armor. And while they start in my deployment zone, because I have more control, more flexibility, the movement of the jump pack would get them up there pretty quick. 5 Assault Marines behind some building that you can't draw a line of sight to and you have to go around, that that causes a little bit of pause. That's going to influence things. They're not, so the toolkit, the reason why this is a great example of the toolkit, it's not game changing. I'm not going to give you this, by game changing, I mean, it's not a secret where, hey, do this and you will win every game. Like, that's the only thing I can say about that is it doesn't exist. But the idea with the toolkit is you take 4 or 5 of these tools and they're going to give you an advantage. They're going to position little things that are going to position you so that you have momentum. Or if you make a mistake in 40K because you have other positions that are advantageous, the mistake won't be game ending. It won't be as bad. Or when the dice work against you, you can recover. I guess that's the best explanation. The toolkits will allow you to recover when you mess up or when the dice go against you or you have a bad turn. They will allow you to stay and fight in the game tactically. Likewise, they will give you a tremendous advantage if you are rolling hot, if you are rolling amazing, if things are working and you're having great momentum. It's going to magnify, it's going to carry that momentum even further. So that is the commando unit. We're going to look at the siphon unit. We're going to look at different ways of entry on the table. We're going to look at snipers, all these little bits and pieces on there. We're going to look at skirmishers. These are not unit specific. These are not army specific. It's here's what it does. What do you have in your collection, or what are you looking to obtain in your collection that you could plug in, and then at the start of the game, meaning we're setting up to start playing, you think, okay, what little toolkits am I going to use?